All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, hello everybody. I hope everyone can hear me out there. This is Todd McGee, the president of NACIO, and welcome to our membership webinar for September. We've got a couple of things that we're going to talk about today. First off, we want to get a report from the Texas Christian University Public Communicator Program. Dr. Jackie Lambiase is the co-director of that program, and she's on the line with us, and she's going to talk a little bit about it. And then Jessie Beyer, who is our first vice president from Blue Earth County, Minnesota, who actually went through the program this summer. She's going to talk a little bit about her experiences. And then the second part of the webinar is social media and public records, what you need to know. Anil Chawla, hope I pronounced that right, the founder and CEO of Archive Social, is going to come on and talk about why local governments need to consider archiving their social media, and then also a little bit about the product that they have that does that. But before we get to that, I've got a couple of things I just want to touch base on. First off, for those of you who go to the NACO conferences, the legislative conference this year is in February, and we've already got our dates scheduled for the NACIO meetings. We will have our business membership meeting on Sunday, February 22nd at 10:30 a.m. And then at 1:30 p.m., we will have our roundtable discussion on media relations, and that's where we invite county commissioners and staff to come and share their experiences and talk about any issues that may be going on in their jurisdictions that they would like some feedback on from the assembled PIOs in the room. So that's always a good session. Stay tuned to the NACIO website. We'll have more information about that. And I also wanted to wrap up with one thing, talk a little bit about our awards presentation. You can see a photograph from our award celebration in New Orleans this summer. There's a lot of the NACIO members there. We had a good time on touring the Mississippi River on the Delta Queen. Particularly, I want to point out in the left corner there is Larry Liddell, our past president from Mississippi, who was able to come down and join us for that. It was good to see Larry. We also had Brett Scott, one of our past presidents from Delaware, was in town too, and he came by. So it's good to see everybody. We had a good time. And speaking of the awards, we are looking for someone to volunteer to chair the 2015 awards competition. And there on the screen you can see the duties. You would coordinate the awards contest. You would be responsible for getting a team of judges, hopefully non-NACIO members, to serve as the judges. Groups that have done it in the past have been state association PIOs. When I did it, we got the North Carolina Association of Government Information Officers to do it. So there's no local PIOs. It was state and city PIOs. No county PIOs were involved. Other groups have gotten press associations to do them. So, you know, those are the kinds of things, people that are great for judges. You would also be responsible for conducting a webinar to unveil the award winners, and we usually do that in June. And then you would preside at the award ceremony at the 2015 NACO annual conference, which will be held in beautiful Mecklenburg County, North Carolina this summer, or next summer. So if that is something that you are interested in, you would like to learn more about getting more involved with NACIO, and I did the awards competition several years ago, and I can tell you it is a very worthwhile endeavor. You can learn a lot from that, and it is a great way to learn and hear what other people are doing. So if you're interested, just please call me or send me an email. There's my information on the screen there, todd.mcgee@ncacc.org, or 919-715-7336. So with that being said, we're going to start with our first thing here, and I've got a couple of polls I wanted to do. So we're going to launch those really quickly. First off, I want y'all to answer this poll very quickly. Are you a NACIO member or not? I'm going to give you about 5 more seconds to vote. All right, then the next poll is, what social media sites are you using? And you should be able to vote for more than one on this one. So we'll give that a few more seconds. And then the last question is, are you currently archiving your social media posts? Okay, so we'll close that one out. So I will see if we can show the results of those polls at the end of the webinar. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to our first presenter, who's Dr. Jackie Lambiase from Texas Christian University. Dr. Lambiase, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Todd. Thanks for having me.
And I'm going to try to give you the keyboard and mouse so you can take it over. And if that doesn't work, I will advance the slides here. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Todd, so I lost the whole view of the slides that I had before, so I'm not sure what happened. I still had the...
All right, I just tried it again. See if that'll work.
Okay.
There we go. I think I see your screen now. Looks like you got a big horned frog on it.
I do. I'm not really sure what happened. You know what I could do is just look at my slideshow version here. Is that what I'm?
Yeah, just bring yours up and run it from your computer.
All right.
There you go.
All right, there we go. So first of all, I'm really glad to be with NACIO today. Thanks for a few minutes of time on your meeting, Todd. We really appreciate it. And in a minute, I'm going to turn it over to Jesse Beyer, who was a participant in the program this past summer and will be back with us next year to work on a full-bodied sort of comprehensive communication plan for her county. The Certified Public Communicator program is a fairly new program here at TCU. We graduated our first class this past summer, and Jesse was able to attend that graduation ceremony. And I'm just showing you a really quick screenshot of more information that's available at the certifiedpubliccommunicator.org website. Basically, the program is for public sector communicators who would like to work on a plan for their city, county, or other public sector agency. This past summer, we had people from Texas and from other states. We had people from school districts and some other public agencies, but primarily people are from cities and counties. And they're generally working on putting together a comprehensive plan for their organization. Once you enroll in the program, of course, you're getting a lot of great development for yourself, professional development for yourself, but what you'll take away is a 3-year communication plan for your organization. We tailor instruction to help each person in the program build the kind of plan that their organization needs. What we first start out with is helping people figure out what their assets are in terms of pieces of a plan that they might have, and then we help them put that together into something more comprehensive. It's a partnership between the school that I work for, the School of Strategic Communication, which is in the Bob Schieffer College of Communication here at TCU. We're based in Fort Worth, Texas. And we've been working in partnership right now with the Texas Association of Municipal Information Officers, and that was a large state organization that's really helped us make our start. We're beginning to reach out to other potential partners, and we're hoping NACIO will partner with us in the future. The TCU Extended Education Program, which helps us provide executive education, is another partner for us. And some of the benefits of the program are that attendees walk away with this 3-year communication plan. We give you extensive classroom instruction, but we also aren't just lecturing. We have people working in groups on special projects together. We focus in on the first summer especially on theory from public relations, advertising, and marketing. And the reason that we do this is a lot of people, I think, who are serving as public information officers or county marketing executives may have come out of journalism, and they perhaps as an undergrad did not get much of this kind of education. We also infuse the program with a lot of information on metrics and measurement, social influence, and digital media. We also talk about mobile. So the benefits of the program are the theoretical foundation. We have a database of public sector cases and also public sector communication plans that you can use to model yours after. You get to network with all these great public sector communicators that are in your cohort, and you have access to me and other professors in the program beyond the classroom and beyond the time that you're here in the summer. Just some real basic logistics would be You're here for 95 hours of instruction. You're here for 1 week in summer 1 for 40 hours. You come back for a midwinter checkup, but if you're not able to do that, we have a distance way of doing that online. You come back in summer 2 for 40 more hours, and the cost of the program includes 5 nights of lodging during the summers and all meals during that time. So the $3,850 cost is for the entire program, and it includes all the instruction, all the instructional materials, plus the lodging and the food. Just a little bit more about what happens during summer 1, and then Jesse's going to talk a lot more than me, I hope, about what happened when she was here during summer 1. Here's some of the topics that we talk about: crisis communication, some marketing and PR principles, and a lot of theoretical foundations for communication. We look at case studies, and then we start to have some goal-setting sessions for you to figure out how you would begin to write this communication plan and really what the goals would be for your organization. Do you have a strategic plan that you could base it on, or do you need something like that? When you come back for summer 2, we do a lot of hands-on practice and plan refining at that time. And a typical day in the program runs from about 8:30 to 5, and we have some great sessions usually in the morning. We have something called sandboxes where we bring in professionals to come in and work on hands-on learning, whether that's in our studio downstairs or a creativity session or something like that. And then after hours is usually you're working with other members of your cohort to do the reading and to get prepared for the next day. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Beyer, who is a great NACIO contact for you all. And here's some fun pictures from some of the fun stuff we did this past summer while she was here.
Todd mentioned earlier, I'm Jessica Beyer, Communications Manager and Business Analyst for Blue Earth County, Minnesota, and the First Vice President of NACIO. And so just to kind of give you some background information, I first learned about the Certified Public Communicator Program at the 2013 NACO Annual Conference, which was held in Fort Worth in Tarrant County, Texas. And so Professor Lambiase attended our NACIO business meeting as part of the conference and spoke about the new Certified Public Communicator Program, which was just starting its first cohort later that July of last year. So I was intrigued at the concept and the uniqueness of the program and was really excited for NACIO to look for ways to partner with TCU for the benefit of our members through educational opportunities such as webinars and the Certified Public Communicator Program itself. So in order to learn more about the potential benefits of the program and to research how NACIO could further partner with TCU, the NACIO board elected to send me through the new program. So as Professor Lambiase mentioned, I'm taking part in the 2014-2015 cohort. And what I'm doing is I'm evaluating the benefits for our members should NACIO start a scholarship program or some kind of sponsorship for our members. And the program is a total of 95 hours of instruction between summer 1, winter, and summer 2 of the in-person course time. And so I started the program this past July as part of cohort 2. So the program is still very new, but is packed with an incredible amount of information. And I'm currently in the process of going through individual assignments to help me set the groundwork for putting together my organization's communications plan. Honestly, I can't say enough good things about the program, and I'm only a fraction of the way through it. To me, the difference between this educational experience and others is that you have the combination of all types of different learning styles and experiences, from presentations to hands-on exercises to group work. Plus, by being on campus, you're able to become immersed in the program and have the ability to establish much deeper relationships with members of the cohorts and faculty. The program differs in the fact that you end the training and year-long educational experience with a 3-year communications plan that benefits your agency. So you're taking something tangible away from the learning experience in itself. And you also graduate as a certified public communicator from TCU, which is fabulous. The program itself reaches far deeper than any traditional workshop or conference type presentations. They are part of the experience in the groundwork, but there is a lot of hands-on learning. And while I was on the TCU campus, I felt their time was very well planned out, and that as a participant, I was given a first-class experience that was not only educational, but a lot of fun. I think you can see from the photos that are on the screen, you know, we have time to network in the evenings. The one photo is a group of us went to Joe T. Garcia's for dinner. We utilize social media, and so Karen, who's in the bottom left corner there, she had her picture with the horned frog, and Bob Schaefer himself with a little Post-it note. So there's a lot of fun that goes on, but a lot of learning. It's very intense, but you know, you have to mix fun into that as well. And so the program really allowed me to connect with peers doing the same work I'm doing. The majority of the agencies involved in the program were cities, but I'm hopeful that as the program progresses, we'll have more and more counties take part. That's kind of why we're presenting on the call today and why NACIO is interested in getting its membership the opportunity to take part. An aspect I didn't plan on that was incredibly beneficial was the networking and the idea sharing that you get through conversations at lunch, dinner, and during time spent on campus with colleagues in both your cohort and the previous cohort. One of the benefits is that we had 21 participants in our cohort, and there were 27 in the first year. And so you really get some time to not only mesh with your cohort, but both, and a lot of great idea sharing goes on. And as a participant, you're provided readings on a variety of topics ahead of time before you arrive on campus that specifically pertain to the work we're trying to achieve in government communications. The readings and information is well planned out and directly tied to the faculty presentations, discussions, and the group work that we took part in. And having this type of introduction to the material, such as the evolution of government, theory sessions on topics such as social media, crisis communications, and branding, to name a few, that was just incredibly beneficial. I found myself using information I learned right away and just overall having a better understanding in my work as a PIO. I think when you're learning about some of these type of topics in college, you don't always have the real-world experience to work from or to allow for the information to really sink in and put it into practice. So I have pages and pages of notes to prove it. So I learned a great deal of information just in my first week of the program. The next piece for me that I'm excited to get started on is applying the information I learned specifically to my communications plan for my organization. You know, I honestly can't say enough good things about the program, and I'm just excited to start this plan and to work with not only my peers in going through the process, but faculty, and I was also paired with a mentor from Cohort 1. So it just brings everything together as I'm trying to put together the comprehensive plan, and it's going to be so beneficial for my organization to have something that's measurable and brings greater consistency in our work and communications. So, you know, I welcome folks to contact me with questions they might have about the program, and I will plan on updating NACIO members about my experience moving forward. If you'd like to reach me for questions outside this webinar, my contact information is found on the NACIO website, and I appreciate your attention, and I'll turn things back over to Dr. Lambiase, who, by the way, does a fabulous job along with Dr. Laura Bright coordinating the program. So thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to present.
All right, thank you, Jessica. Back to you, Dr. Lambiase.
Hi, we really don't have a... Hi, well, thanks a lot, Jesse, for that affirmation. We really do try to make the program beneficial to each participant, and if we aren't doing what you need, we will try to find a way to do that. So we have, there were some new people in the program this past summer who were working for public sector agencies, and so we're tailoring things especially for them, and we certainly will do that in the future. I just thought I'd share a little bit more eye candy for all the participants to look at today. We're based in Fort Worth, Texas. That's a really beautiful picture of Fort Worth. I don't know if it's that pretty, but anyway, it's a fun place to come. It's Cowtown, USA, and there's a lot of things to do at night, so we try to have some fun along the way. I don't know if you saw, I'll back up one slide to the rewiring our brains, which is basically the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the bottom layer is usually food, water, shelter, and warmth, and we added Wi-Fi to the bottom there. So we are doing a lot of heavy-duty learning and a deep dive, and people are sort of exhausted with some of the reading sometimes, but we also have a lot of fun here in Fort Worth. This is a picture of our campus commons here at TCU, and it's a beautiful campus of about 9,000 students, and they're not here, so that's a good thing. It's kind of quiet and nice, but there are a few students hanging around in the summers when we're doing this program. These are some of the facilities on campus as well. And this is my building, particularly where the program is based, and our Convergence Center is down there on the bottom right-hand side. I'm too available to answer any questions that you have today or later on. Please don't hesitate to send me an email or give me a call. My communication information is at the front end of this slideshow. Todd, thanks again for letting us talk a little bit about the program.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Lambiase and Jesse, for sharing your experiences. I think it's really, you know, I was so excited when I just kind of stumbled upon that a couple of years ago when I was looking for things to do in Fort Worth at the NACO conference. And so we had Dr. Lambiase come out to our meeting, and it was just a great program, and we're looking forward to NACO continuing some sort of a partnership. If y'all out there are interested in attending, we are hopefully at some point going to continue offering scholarship assistance. You know, maybe NACO can pay half, or if your county will pay the other half, or something like that. So anyway, we want to try to get our people out there involved, because it does really sound like a great program, and we're looking forward to that. So thank you both again for coming and being with us today. And now we're going to turn it over to our next presenter, who is going to be Anil Chawla, who is with Archive Social, and he's going to talk about their product that they have and the importance of archiving social media records. So, Mr. Anil, take it away.
Todd, thanks so much, and thanks to everyone at NACO for providing me with this special opportunity to speak to all of you. This issue of social media as a public record is an emerging issue, so my overall goal here today is to help provide some background information on the topic and really arm you with an action plan for how to think about this issue moving forward in your agencies. And a quick sanity check, Todd, I just want to ensure, are my slides showing up on the presentation now?
They are. We can see them good.
Perfect. Great. Well, I've got a lot of information to cover here today, and so here's a quick agenda, look at the agenda of what I want to cover. I am going to talk about the public records law, but what I really want to do is start with some real-life examples and case studies that contextualize the issue and really make the case for social media as a public record. I know just from experience that not all of you on the phone today have probably had a discussion about social media as a record. You may not be convinced that social media falls under your public records law, or that it's really not worth retaining at this point. And by providing some examples and case studies, I want to make the case to you that the communication that happens across your social media channels is growing in importance each and every day, and it is communication that we should consider to be record. And the best thing that your agency can do is at least start thinking about this issue and how to approach it. So on that note, I want to cover a handful of different options that you have as an agency, ranging from the most basic to the most sophisticated, depending on your environment and your usage of social media, and really arm you today, leaving this presentation, with a handful of different options for how you might get ahead of this issue. Time permitting, I do want to show you an actual archive so you can see what I mean when what it means to really retain social media content and what it takes. And then, of course, we do want to leave some time for questions at the end, both for questions that you may have on this topic as well as on the previous presentation that you just saw. So with that, what I'm going to do is jump in and really talk, first starting at the kind of the front of the issue. What is the real problem here? Is social media a public record? And for us to really evaluate that, it starts with looking at the public records laws in your state. Now, each state has its own records law with different names. Colorado has a law called the Open Records Act. North Carolina is GS 132. Florida has its own public records law. Texas has the Public Information Act, and so forth. But it turns out that all of these laws were written a couple of decades ago based off of the Federal Freedom of Information Act, and they all more or less say the same thing. And when you take a look at these laws, you'll realize that even though they were written several decades ago, they were written in a very forward-thinking fashion to account for the fact that technology and the way we communicate will change. And really the law focuses on the fact that what is communicated is more important than how it's communicated. Most of the public records laws that I've looked at, and you can double check this in your state, actually contain a phrase that says, regardless of physical form, government communications that are sent or received are public record. And then, of course, some laws like Colorado's Open Records Act have been updated over time to try to be more explicit about the new technology like email, as you can see here. And it's just the requirement for retaining content that's transmitted electronically to and being also received from your citizens. Now, this again is an interpretation of the law, but this is not just my interpretation. In fact, if you take a look at documentation put out by national archives at the federal level, as well as states such as North Carolina, Florida, Washington, Virginia, Ohio, Texas, and others, state bodies at either the governor's office level or the archives divisions have come forth with guidance in more than a dozen different states interpreting this exact language to cover social media content. And we can go really into the weeds in terms of the legal language and so forth, but the reality and I think the practicality of it is pretty obvious. If you receive a citizen complaint today as a letter or an email, we know that it's a record that's worth retaining as a government record. So if that citizen complaint comes in as on a piece of paper or an email, we know it as a record. So why is it any different if it comes in as a tweet? A citizen complaint is a citizen complaint directed at a government agency in a form of communication that's recorded. And so I think if you think about the actual type of communication that's happening on these channels and think about how that fits in as an analogy versus the kind of content you use to receive over email and on physical, on paper, it becomes clear that it really doesn't matter how you got that information. It's that conveyance of information that really determines whether it's a record or not. Now, some states, as I mentioned, have put out additional guidance on the topic, but most of them have not updated their laws to really change because, again, the law was written in a very broad fashion to cover the different types of ways we communicate. One notable exception here is with the state of Texas. Last year passed a Senate bill to update the Texas Public Information Act to explicitly list internet posting as a form of communication that should be considered a record. So just another clear example of the fact that the laws are being interpreted this way. Now, one of the questions that we often get is, sure, the law may cover social media content, but I don't really ever receive a request for social media, and who's going to ask me for a record of social media? And I'm going to give you some examples here in the presentation of situations where folks have been requested for social media content, but also want to ask you to step back and take a look at the kinds of public records requests you receive today. For example, do you receive any kind of requests that start with this phrase, any and all documents, all reports of the incident, all notifications of the street closure, all emails and communications? If you take a look at these kinds of requests, which in some cases may be overly broad, but in some cases are actually requests that you have to fulfill, the citizens and the journalists that are asking for this information are asking for anything that's relevant. Again, it's the nature of the content that matters. And for us as a government agencies to correctly fulfill our obligations to the transparency requirements would mean for us to include everything that we've communicated, regardless of whether it was over email in a press release or over social media, particularly if it's a street closure, for example, during an emergency. Now, all of that is somewhat academic, so I actually want to take some time to dive into some real social media records to make the case to you that, yes, in fact, each day in government we are seeing communications that across social media convey content that is worth keeping. One of the easiest examples to look at for this is any kind of emergency, and I have a couple of screenshots up here from some high-profile emergencies that we've seen over the years. Boston bombings is a really interesting case in which the entire world seemed to have turned to the Boston PD Twitter account. The Twitter account actually surged from 50,000 followers to 300,000 followers while the hunt was on for the suspects. At least every news article that I read was quoting the tweets from Boston PD and really nothing else. That was really the primary source of information during that emergency. And it makes sense because social media provides a medium that is extremely real-time and extremely viral. So it's been proven to be the most effective way for governments to get information out during emergencies. And a quick trivia fact from the Boston bombings is that the very first announcement that the suspect had been captured was none other than a tweet. It wasn't a tip to a journalist. It wasn't any kind of press conference. It wasn't anything on the Boston website. It was simply a tweet from the Boston PD. And so you can think about that situation, Boston PD getting the information out as quickly as possible to the widest audience that they could possibly reach. Twitter was the perfect medium for that. And when they put that information out on Twitter, that was the only record of that content. And of course, it was an important government record. And this happens each day, every day in situations that perhaps don't have national coverage, but we all have emergencies, we all have crimes in our communities, and social media content in those times does constitute quite a bit of important information that should be retained as record. Now, aside from emergencies, also day-to-day, we are seeing lots of law enforcement agencies, police departments, and in the counties, the sheriff's offices, utilizing social networking to put information out about wanted suspects. And the hope being that if you put information about wanted suspects out on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and other channels, again, you're reaching a wider audience and are more likely to get information back from the community to help you solve these crimes. Now, the city of Philadelphia has been quite bleeding edge with this. In fact, the Philly PD is utilizing YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, it's either Instagram or Pinterest. They're on multiple channels. And when I spoke to the PIO over there just probably about 3 months ago, he informed me that they've actually solved more than 200 crimes due to the crime tips that they received because of their social media postings. And when I told him that, that's great news that you've been able to solve so many crimes and that social media has played a role in that, he actually corrected me and said, no, well, social media has played a role in hundreds of crimes solved. The 200 number that I'm giving you is where social media was the primary source of information and where us posting on social media really led to the information for the arrest and solving of that crime. So again, that kind of content being conveyed across social media, it's hard to argue against the value of that content and the need to retain it as a record. We're also seeing, throughout the country, more experimentation with social media in a way that just makes sense. So, for example, in Kansas City, the 311 Center now for more than a year has integrated Twitter, where citizens can actually report incidents via Twitter to KCMO 311. And 311 will then respond back with a support ticket and a link to check the status. And again, this makes a ton of sense because as a citizen, if you were to notice a problem somewhere like a broken traffic light or a pothole or something like that, it's a lot of work for you to go and find the county website, city website, form what they have to fill out to report this issue, or to find a phone number and call it and then perhaps be on hold and talk to somebody. You're more likely to do this if the government around you has made it convenient and is active on the channels that you're active on. And so if KCMO is on 311's on Twitter, you can just, the moment you get a chance, just tweet really quickly because that's the easiest thing for you to do and have this issue taken care of. Again, you're reporting a problem that's a government record and the status being conveyed back and forth. That communication is also conceivably a record to hold for the long term. Now, beyond those types of very specific agencies, law enforcement, 311, we see every government agency that's active on social media providing customer service. After all, that's what government is here to do, is to serve the citizens. And so here's an example with the Texas DOT that has nothing to do at all with traffic. Instead, a citizen was trying to reach the DOT, kept trying to call the phone number and couldn't get through. And she started tweeting back and forth with TXDOT on Twitter. And initially, TXDOT told her, well, we have a high call volume, so maybe you're just having trouble getting through. Well, it turned out that actually the citizen had been dialing a number off of a mailing and figured out that the mailing had the wrong number printed on it. And when she finally figured this out, she was able to tweet that feedback back to the Texas DOT to let them know that they had the wrong number on there so they can fix it. And again, this is just customer service happening day in and day out, not even related to this agency's main focus, but it's only being documented on these social channels. And then my final example here goes back to that question that I raised of whether or not agencies are actually receiving public records requests. And here's a really almost too perfect example of making that point. Back in April of this year, a citizen in Seattle was looking at the Twitter feeds that Seattle puts out for their police department. So basically, the police department in Seattle has a program called Tweets by Beat, where for every police beat, they have a Twitter feed that's reporting the various crime incidents and police notifications. And the citizen had been following these feeds to be aware of the crimes and police incidents in his neighborhood. and noticed that sometimes the Twitter feeds were delayed or missing information. So he actually started tweeting back and forth with Seattle PD about this. And just a few tweets in, he said, look, I just want the archives of all of your Twitter feeds, and please consider this a public records request. So it's a bit of a meta example there. Basically, a citizen making a public records request for social media using social media. And after all, why not, right? The agency is available on this platform. It's been communicating back and forth with him. So he felt that he could just make that public records request right there on that channel. Now, Seattle PD did direct him to a website form to fill out for the records request, but nonetheless, they do have to fulfill this request for the Twitter feeds. And the citizen was quite sophisticated in his request. He actually had a few more tweets after this where he was asking for some more detailed information. So hopefully with that, you've seen how the law does apply to social media in terms of public records, how content on social media each and every day can constitute public record. I think the final piece of the puzzle in terms of determining whether this is an issue that you want to prioritize in your agency is to understand what are the implications. And so I have two case studies that I'd like to cover here really quickly to just help you think about this issue, and particularly if you decide that this is something that you want to take action on. This first case study gives us a real good sense of how to think about record keeping to minimize your risk. This is a situation actually involving email because there is quite a bit of case law in terms of email records. I think where we are with social media today is we're probably about a decade or so behind with email. But if you remember from about a decade or so ago with email, there was question about whether email is a public record and how does it need to be retained and so forth. And this is a situation in the city of Shoreline, Washington, in which a citizen made a request for an email, and the city was actually able to provide a copy of the email for that request. Now, they weren't able to provide the original. I believe what happened is they had forwarded the email from one account to another. But they weren't able to provide the original, just a copy. And the citizen realized that they were getting a copy of the email, but was really interested in who sent the email and kind of how it was routed around, and came back to the city saying, we want the original email with all of the original metadata. Now, if you're not familiar with the concept of metadata, this is data associated with data. So if you think about an email that has a couple of sentences in it, associated with that text is a bunch of other technical information about how the email was sent, what computer servers it was sent across, what were the timestamps, so on and so forth. That's the metadata. And it turned out that because the city only had a copy of the email, not the original, they couldn't produce the original metadata. And the case actually went up to the Washington Supreme Court in 2010, where the Supreme Court ruled that, yes, the metadata associated with that email is part of the public record, and the city is responsible for producing it. And because they couldn't, the Washington Supreme Court actually fined the city $100,000. The city finally decided to settle the case in 2013 and was forced to pay not only the $100,000, but also more than $400,000 in the plaintiff's legal fees. And so this is a really eye-opening case that makes the point that even if you do start keeping records, the way you keep those records matters. And just by not having the metadata of that email, the city was out more than $500,000. And how that relates to social media, as I later on will get into some solutions, everything has metadata when it comes to digital communication. So if you take a look at a tweet, this tweet, for example, only has 126 characters of data, but it actually has more than 2,000 characters of metadata, information such as user IDs, timestamps, location information, what Twitter client was used to post it. And again, as we've seen with Shoreline and with some other legal precedents, that information could also be important in terms of your public records and legal requirements. The second case study I want to cover is a little bit closer to home in terms of social media content. This is a lawsuit that was really a first of its kind back in 2012, in which the city of Honolulu was removing content from their police department's Facebook page. Essentially, the police department was receiving posts from a pro-gun group, and the posts were very pro-gun, and the police department decided just to remove that because they felt like it wasn't relevant to the conversation. And I believe they also did end up banning the person posting that content. Well, the citizens that were trying to post this content turned around with a lawsuit claiming a First Amendment freedom of speech right to express their opinion on the topic of guns and gun ownership. This lawsuit started in 2012. It was never actually ruled upon. Earlier this year, the case was settled by the city agreeing to pay about $30,000 in the plaintiff's attorney's fees to drop the case. But it brings to light a couple of different issues, including comment moderation. We at Archive Social absolutely advise you to have a comment moderation policy, have it clearly posted and linked to from your social media profiles. If you don't have a comment moderation policy, we have a free template on our website at archivesocial.com. You can feel free to go ahead and download that, or download it from another city or county that may have one. But it also brought to light the fact that this information that's on social media, and whether information you put out or information that's being posted on your site, such as comments, is government communication and can find its way to court. And for the city of Honolulu, I don't know if they kept records or not when they deleted these postings, but you can just imagine going to court being accused of deleting content. And if you haven't kept any records, there's really no way to tell your side of the story. So hopefully they kept some kind of screenshot or something before they deleted that content. So this record keeping is really important beyond just public records, because as litigation stretches into other arenas such as social media, you will need to relay your side of the story with the records that you have. So I've tried to make a pretty strong case that this is an important issue to think about today, that there is some urgency given some of the legal precedents that we're seeing to solve it. But in the past, many of us have been able to rely on IT to really solve this problem in the background. And the key realization here with social networking is that for perhaps the first time ever, this is data that exists completely outside of IT's control. So unlike your emails and files and other documents on a shared folder or in SharePoint, none of this content resides in your IT infrastructure. In fact, it may never even pass through your network. So a citizen could report a crime tip to you via a private Facebook message, and it goes to Facebook.com server, but it never comes to your IT server. So that's really the key point there. There are some other issues in terms of getting your hands around the decentralized nature of social media. And also the fact that you as information officers are responsible for public information means that at the end of the day, ensuring that the information is being retained and you have the capability to produce it is perhaps most interesting and valuable to you. So let me get into some actual solutions here. Now my goal again is to give you a handful of different solutions, starting from the most basic, working to the most sophisticated. Before I actually talk about the solutions, it's important to talk about what not to do. And hopefully none of you are saying this or hearing this conversation in your agencies today around one-way social media. This is something that we did hear a few years back, that governments were trying to employ one-way social media. And for those of you who are using social media, I'm sure you would agree that the entire purpose of being on social media is to be social and to network and have that two-way conversation. And if you don't do that, you're really not realizing much, if any, of the value of being on social networking. But beyond that kind of philosophical stance, the important thing to recognize is that today on social networking platforms, you cannot disable the two-way conversation. On Facebook, you cannot turn off comments anymore. So if you post anything on Facebook, comments can come in. On Twitter, you can't stop somebody from mentioning you, which is very much seen as a message sent to you. In many of these networks, you can't turn off the private messaging. So when you as an agency make the conscious decision to create a profile on Twitter or Facebook and have a presence there, and then you're there, any incoming messaging that comes to you is your responsibility. There's really no way you can say that you want to be on these platforms and provide communication one way but not receive it the other way. Now, hopefully most of you are not thinking about one way. You're really trying to employ social media for what it is, and you are seeing those benefits. But perhaps I would speculate that most of you on the line today aren't doing anything in particular to retain this information. So what you're really doing is you're relying on Facebook and Twitter to have the data for you in case you ever need it. And the way to think about this is kind of like expecting Joe to have all of the email records in his Outlook on his laptop, right? There's really no guarantee that the social networks have made that this data is going to be there for you and for your governmental requirements. In fact, the moment something is deleted, it's gone forever. Now, you as an agency might not ever delete any of your own content, but that third-party conversation that you're receiving, those comments and replies you're receiving from citizens, are just as much public record. And a citizen could, for example, private message you a crime tip and then change his mind and delete that private message. Or a citizen can write some comments or send you some Twitter mentions and then delete that content. And once it's deleted, it's gone forever from the network, so there's no way possible for you to retrieve it. So you do need to think about archiving, just like your agencies archive your email instead of relying on every employee to keep it in their own Outlook inbox. There needs to be an approach to this. And the most basic thing you can do is start with manual archiving, which is just taking screenshots or even copying and pasting. Some of you may be doing this, and those of you who might be scoffing at this idea, we've had a number of customers that were doing this because it was important for them to have some record rather than nothing, and certainly I think that's a good stance to take. But the customers that we have that were doing this were investing between 4 to 8 hours a week to comprehensively retain these records. And those are the customers that were really trying to have complete records. Other customers that we have, agencies that we've talked to, would only take screenshots when they're purposely deleting something. But again, you know when you're deleting something, but you don't know when the citizens might be deleting something they sent you. Either way, screenshotting is a good way to start, particularly if you don't have a budget today. If you are moderating content, take those screenshots, have some record rather than no record. But just recognize that this is not a long-term strategy. It's very difficult to organize this information over time. And when you do have hundreds of screenshots, being able to search them and find information is a difficult task. And then finally, the records that you get from a screenshot are not extremely authentic records. Today, anything can be photoshopped. So if you do have a screenshot of something and it becomes the center of a legal case, it's pretty hard to make that your primary piece of evidence because nobody knows if that was photoshopped, and the person that you're fighting against might just dispute that record. A much better solution that we'd start by recommending is to have an automated, at least a backup tool. So out there in the market for a number of years, we've seen these low-cost backup tools like Backupify, SocialSafe. I think Backupify used to be free and then fairly inexpensive. It's now $99 a month, so they're trying to make a play to be more business ready. But products such as SocialSafe are only $20 a year, I believe, is where it starts. And these products do a very simple backup of your data. SocialSafe stores it on your local machine, on your laptop or your desktop computer, so it's on the cloud. So you still have to figure out how do you retain that data for the long term. But these are automated tools. They get the data directly from the networks, very inexpensive. The trade-off that you're going to face there is that it is, if you pay $20 a year for government-grade record keeping, you are going to get $20 worth of record keeping. And so it's not a complete comprehensive capture that you might want. And it's also hard to really use these solutions for responding to public information requests and finding your content. The screenshot I have here is from Backupify, and it's actually a screenshot of a Facebook wall. You would never figure out this is a Facebook wall if I didn't tell you that. But actually some of these status updates are related to some of these comments. So these comments were made on these status updates. And the relationship just isn't there because these tools are taking a very simple backup. So if you had to produce a Facebook conversation, you would have to somehow figure out which status update correlated to which comments and piece it all together. And these low-end backup tools really don't provide you with those kinds of tools. So it's definitely a trade-off to consider. And ultimately, these are backup tools, and they're not built for that kind of record keeping again. So it is a situation in which you have to weigh risk versus the cost and decide if this is the right tool for you, whether it's a short-term solution or more of a long-term. Better than that, I would recommend that you look at a true archiving vendor. And anytime you see the word backup in a solution for records, it's probably the wrong solution if backup is how it's primarily described. Anything dealing with records, you want to look for an archive. Archiving is all about having authentic records for the long term and being able to produce those records. Now, there are a number of vendors out there, many of which come from the email archiving space and the web archiving space. And they're starting to bring in new content such as social media and really label themselves as all-in-one. And what I just urge you to do when you look at these vendors is to figure out where are the trade-offs. So if the vendor is really good at archiving email, how are they archiving social media? Are they converting it to email to bring in their email archiving? Are they chopping up a Facebook conversation into a bunch of different posts? Are they converting the data in any way? All of these issues are important to consider. As I mentioned, the metadata is really important, so if they are converting social media content to some other format to fit into their existing archive, they're more than likely losing that metadata, which could be part of the public record and part of a legal dispute. So that's something worth considering. It's also because these archives are generally start out built for email or web pages, they may not provide the best search experience for being able to find your social content and produce it. So if your Facebook conversation has been carved into 10 or 20 different emails, can you piece that all back together again and produce that information? Or what does it take to do that? So it's a big trade-off to consider because at a high level, it sounds like a convenient thing to have it all in one, but you have to understand what those trade-offs are. And the analogy that I always make is to think about the spork, right? The spork sounds like a great idea, and sometimes it is, just depending on your needs. But not everybody wants to eat a salad with a spork, so it's something to think about. So that's what we did at Archive Social when we entered the market a few years ago. We took a look at all of these different types of solutions out there and really put it together, put this, these pros and cons together into a set of 4 criteria here that I'd urge you to consider no matter what solution you're looking at. The first is frequency. How quickly can you get your hands around new content before it's lost or deleted? Because this data is out on Twitter and Facebook, and the longer you take to get it, the more likely it is that it could be lost. Comprehensiveness, do you have all of the metadata for the records? Do you have both sides of the conversation? Are you capturing the data no matter how it got on Facebook.com? If anybody used their smartphone or if they use a work computer, it doesn't matter. Authenticity, again, this information can and will find its way to court. Can you prove that it is an accurate record in court? Can you use it as legal evidence? And then context, I think, is perhaps the most overlooked, is how easily can you locate the records when you need them? Can you actually make sense of the content in your archive? Can you find that Facebook conversation from 3 years ago that has 100 comments on it that came in across 3 weeks? Those are important questions to answer because ultimately archiving and record keeping is not about storing data, it's about producing it and being ready for when you need to produce it. That's essentially what we think social media archiving should be about. And what I want to do now is I know we're coming down with a few minutes on questions, but I'm going to do a quick 1-minute demonstration here so that we can then leave time for questions. There are some archives out there that we've put together with some leading organizations. And one that I want to show you is with Snohomish County, Washington. If you remember, they had the landslide earlier this year. Unfortunately, about a year ago, they had started archiving their social media. And they'd also chosen to make that archive completely publicly available so that anybody can access this information. Well, when the landslide happened, it actually started on a Saturday afternoon, and the communications director there, Bronley Mishler, learned about the incident and immediately sent out a tweet. And in that tweet, she used this hashtag 530slide. She then soon after tweeted out, by the way, we're using hashtag 530slide for this emergency. And this hashtag actually became an important marker for all of the online communication that was happening to inform citizens of what was happening in the emergency, to help squash some of the rumors that were coming out, so on and so forth. And again, a perfect example of how during a time of emergency, government does put out communication that is of long-term value that should be retained. And fortunately, again, Snohomish had been archiving. So what happened was all of this automatically was captured as the incident went through, and is now in an open archive for anybody to access. So I'm actually going to go into here. I just searched for hashtag 530slide, sort by time ascending, and you can actually see a replay of exactly what I just described to you. The very first tweet announcing this landslide with the hashtag. The second tweet saying, by the way, we're sharing info on this hashtag, and so on and so forth. All the photos, all of the responses from citizens and journalists, all of it archived automatically as this emergency was happening. And in fact, Snohomish County has received more than 40 public information requests now. And in the cases in which those requests did cover social media, they were able to point the citizens and the requesters to this open archive. And what's really neat about this is that with social media, I talked about context, is that you can find something like a specific Facebook wall comment and actually replay that entire conversation. So I can click on View Thread here, see that full conversation, replay all the comments back, and have a full, comprehensive, authentic record of exactly what went down during this emergency from both sides of the conversation. Now, I am going to send this slide deck out. I'll coordinate with Todd. I do have some links to both that archive as well as Austin's Open Archive, and North Carolina has an archive with more than 500,000 records. So I encourage you to take a look at it if you're curious to see how this works in more detail. Again, I am with Archive Social. We really do appreciate this opportunity to speak with you today. And with that, I'm going to put my contact information on the screen and hand it back to Todd.
All right. Thank you, Anil. We appreciate the information. And if anybody has any questions, you can type them into the questions block on the, and we'll try to get those answered. Jessie is also hanging on the wire as well, so she can be here too to answer any questions you might have about the TCU program. So there is Anil's information. Also, while I've got everybody, I'll show you the results of the polls that we took earlier, if I can figure out how to do that. We did ask how many of you were NACIO members, and right there is the results of that one. So most of you were. That's great. If you're not a member, we'd encourage you to visit our website at nacio.org and consider checking us out. Another poll that we asked, and this one apparently was not allowing you to select more than one option, was which social media sites you're using. So this is a kind of a brief snapshot of that. Lots of people on Facebook, but I have a feeling there's a lot more people on Twitter too as well. We're seeing a lot more action on that one in local governments lately. And then we asked, were you currently archiving your social media tweets now, your posts? And so as you can see, there's a lot of people who still need to do that one. So again, if you have questions, you can chat them into the box right now. We'll try to get them answered while we still have Anil with us and Jessie. Again, I want to emphasize that we're looking for someone to be a volunteer to coordinate the awards in 2015. So if you're interested in that, just shoot me an email or go to our website and you can get our email address on there. It is a great way to get involved with NACIO. We think we're a great organization, great professional development opportunities for our county public information officers, and that's just a great way to learn about everything that's going on. So Anil, we're getting right up at 3 o'clock, and I don't see any questions coming in, so we're going to go ahead and just end it now. But I do appreciate you coming and sharing information about your product with us. And Jessie, again, I want to thank you and Dr. Lambiase for sharing about your experiences at the Texas Christian University Public Communicator Program. Again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to shoot me or any member of our board of directors an email. You can find all of our contact info on the nacio.org website. And I hope that I'll see some of you in Washington, D.C. in February. Thank y'all and have a great day.